Welcome back, everyone. We are here again on YouTube and LinkedIn with another episode of the Top Innovator Series. This is where we dive into success strategies, and of course, we hear from the brilliant minds behind them. With us today is Isaac Martin. Isaac is the acting CTO with Plantbid, a company that helps landscape professionals optimize their plant material purchases. Before that, he's been in CTO and other tech executive roles with companies in various industries. And today, we're thrilled to have Isaac with us. Isaac, it's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
I'd love to dive with you into your leadership journey, what you learned, what was important for you. Let's start with maybe the secret ingredients in the whole mix. When you reflect on your whole journey, what do you think are some of the ingredients for your success? What do you think are factors that contribute to your journey?
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot. I think leadership is a skill like any other skill. I think that just recognizing that alone is a really important aspect of leadership. And if you're talking about tech leadership in particular, I think that it's something that a lot of folks don't recognize initially, and they sort of lean really heavily on their engineering skills, because a lot of people who get into tech in engineering are engineers. Very, very natural thing to happen. And so they're very good at engineering, writing software or architecting systems or whatever it is that they're doing. And they've been put in a leadership role because they're good at those things. But it turns out that being good at those things is not the same as being a good leader. And in fact, the skills don't even really translate that well. They're kind of just different skills. I mean, the communication is always useful, right? But recognizing that it's a skill and leaning into that. So reading some books about leadership, talking to people who are good leaders about what it's like to be a leader, and what do they think about in the day-to-day, or the problems that they run into, how do they accomplish them, what are the pitfalls that they saw over the course of their career that they think are worth talking about. Just observing their behavior. How do they solve problems? I try, whenever I'm with other leaders, to observe their behavior intentionally, and look at problems that they're solving and think to myself, is that a good way to solve that problem? And if so, maybe I should adopt that strategy. So I think that those are the elements that have kind of contributed to my success as a leader. Humility, probably. I don't know if it's paradoxical for me to say that I'm the most humble person, but it is useful to be humble, right, in your approach to leadership. I think it's important to think of yourself in leadership roles as sort of serving the people that you're leading. And by thinking that way, it just sort of naturally makes it easier to do what you're trying to do.
Yeah. I think the starting point of what you said is important, because it's the foundation for it. Realizing that leadership is a skill like any other, and it can be learned. And then you can build on it, because many people come with the mistaken belief that either you have it or you don't, and then there's not much to build on that, right?
I definitely think that most people can develop leadership skills to some degree. Of course, there are people who are sort of naturally pick it up easier than others. That's the case, but it's definitely not a binary, like, oh, you're a leader or you're not.
Yep. Talk to me about what it was like for you to discover this, that it's a different skill and all the things that come with it. What were the surprises? What were some aha moments? What turned out to be totally different from what you expected there when you made these first discoveries on the leadership journey?
Yeah, I think that prior to ever being in engineering leadership roles, I have taken leadership roles throughout a lot of my life. So I wouldn't say, even as in elementary school, if you're in a group project, I tended to be the person who was leading the project. So that's different than a CTO at a tech company, but there are some sort of foundational similarities there, which is organizing a group of people together to accomplish something, and not necessarily directing their effort, but just being the sort of point of the spear that pushes through like chaos into your goal as a group.
The point to push is through chaos. I like that. That's gonna be
Yeah, I think that's an accurate description generally of leadership. So I wouldn't say that there was really like a time where I was like, aha, this is what leadership is.
Okay.
But for sure, I learned over the course of my life. It's not like when I was in elementary school, I could have verbalized almost anything about leadership.
Sure.
I think that when I was younger, I think I leaned more heavily into sort of top-down, really heavy, maybe you might call authoritarian styles, where there's like or like pathological, like control heavy styles.
Okay.
And I do that less now. Maybe that's because I've been in startup environments where pathological behaviors are not better for success. Generative behaviors are. But I think also just that sort of like really heavy leaning into I'm trying to control everything by like tightening my grip is just not a good strategy in general for like most leadership things. And it's kind of better to, try to let the parts just do their best and massage that into a cohesive ball, a shape that makes sense. Like if you have 10 cats and you let them just walk in random directions, then the cats will all be gone. But it's okay for them to walk and hunt and do their thing, but just you got to make sure they're going that way so that they all get to where they're trying to go generally instead of random directions. If that
You have
makes
a
sense.
lot of neat metaphors. I like that. Now,
Yeah, metaphors are useful for.
You also mentioned that you pay attention to what other leaders are doing and see what you can adapt from them, what you can learn from them. Talk to me about some of the advice that you got from other leaders, from maybe trusted advisors or peers or other people you consider to be mentors. What is some advice that you got, and maybe even some advice where you first thought, this makes no sense, never gonna do this, and maybe looking back, there was more wisdom in what they said than
Sure.
originally looked.
Well, I think that the leader that I've gotten the most explicit advice from, he doesn't even really know who I am. He's a YouTube video that I watch. His name, I think his name is Dave. It's like the name of the channel is Continuous Delivery, I think, or something like that. I don't agree with everything that he says, but he says a lot of interesting stuff. And some of it I do think is really valuable and I've learned a lot from. So one of the more extreme things, this is just like a point you were talking about, what's a crazy thing that some leader has once suggested to you, is that he asserts or argues that paired programming is the way to make sure that code is stable. Don't do pull requests. Pull requests are not the way. Do paired programming and then just no pull requests. And in order to actually lean into this, that means basically every line of code needs to be pair programmed. Not literally every line of code, but a vast majority of it. And that requires a very different kind of team configuration than is common in the industry. Most team configurations aren't two people working together on a problem. Most of them are individual engineers working on a problem, right? So I thought this was a bit crazy when I, saw him suggest it. I did try to implement it in a sort of experimental way and found some success, but I haven't managed to fully sort of realize it. And I continue to be sort of on the fence about, is this really the best way to ensure your code is safe or is production worthy or whatever you want to call it. you asked for an example where you actually adopted it. I guess I didn't totally adopt it, but there are some learnings that I did adopt from it, and that is that although I don't necessarily set up the team such that whenever people are working, they are working together, I do encourage a lot of collaboration and pair programming. Like there is, now that I've sort of heard that from Dave, I hope his name's Dave, because he keeps saying it. Now that I heard that from him, I do lean more into sort of collaborative coding experiences where I'll sit down and help someone with something, or I'm more open to having someone sit down and work with me, not necessarily as a rubber duck, but actually like two heads are better than one situation.
Yeah. And makes some sense, right? And maybe to the viewers, if you happen to know the channel, throw it in the comments and we'll see if the name is really Dave. Then we can check it there.
I hope so.
Yeah. Now, Isaac, we talked about your past leadership journey. I'd love to take a look at where you are today. Again, not a question about positions or projects or companies or anything like that. Still about your leadership journey. When you look at where you are now, what is something that you are working on right now? What is an area where you feel I want to grow there? There is room to go. There is something that I want to build on. What is something where you say, I'm going to put a spotlight, I'm going to put a focus on that. That's where I want to put some attention.
Well, there is an aspect of my communication style that I've been thinking about a lot and sort of experimenting with.
Okay.
And that is, I'm a pretty analytical person. And when when someone comes to me and says something like, oh, I'm going to implement this, I don't know, this architecture or this framework or whatever, my reaction to that is usually that if I see risks, I'll bring them up basically instantaneously. I'll be like, oh, did you think about this, that, or this? I've gotten some feedback from some folks that they would prefer that I not immediately launch into, did you think about these risks? And instead ask them things like, how are you going to implement that? Or something like that, and just watch for the risks. Now, I don't actually know that that's better. They say that they would prefer that. And so I'm taking them seriously and I'm really reflecting on, like when I get feedback from folks who, you know, seem like they're acting in good faith, I think you should take it seriously. And so I am trying to think of ways in which I can sort of lean into that and just asking myself, is that, would that be better? Would that create better outcomes for everybody? Like, would people be happier with my interaction with them? Am I annoying people and not realizing it? Just, you know, generally like asking reflective questions about that. So that's something that I'm working on as we speak. It's challenging. It's hard to work on stuff like that because people won't always be honest with you if you ask them, right? Especially if they're people who report to you, right? If you say, hey, is anything that I do bother you? Well, even if you have a really good relationship and they know that they can tell you anything within legal boundaries and professional boundaries, still some people just won't feel comfortable being like, yes, these things that you tell me are irritating to me. So it's a challenge for sure, but I am trying to explore this area at the moment.
So this sounds like a really neat behavioral experiment that you're doing there, right? Trying to change some behavior and figuring out what is the outcome of that. And I don't know if you have that, if you have some goalposts to measure it afterwards. And you talked about that, right? How do I know afterwards if it's better? Are there any metrics for that, or is it just people feeling better, or what's the metrics there? Yeah,
it's quantifying stuff is the key to understanding everything in the universe, right? So like the problem with business is, and with like human interaction and stuff is we have all these like layers of abstraction, and
Yep.
there are certain layers of abstraction that don't connect very clearly with the ones below them. We're missing some stuff in between. We can't go from our understanding of physics to our understanding of consciousness directly. Like, we can't tell a clear story. There's gaps in there. And even worse is trying to get from atoms to, does me talking about the risks instantly bother people or not, right? There is a way to tell that story. We can't tell it yet. So there's all sorts of stuff in business and the world that we can't quantify, but we do have to do our best to recognize that it exists. So I actually think that one of the biggest pitfalls that leaders get into is ignoring things that they can't quantify. Because there are things that
That's
you can't
fair.
quantify in business, and they matter.
Yep.
And you can say that, well, we can't quantify them, so they might as well not matter because we can't talk about them without quantifying them. But I think that's going too far. I think
That's
that you
fair.
can like address stuff.
Yep.
You're not going to get perfection, but and it's challenging, especially for really analytic people who want this data-driven approach. But yeah, I don't know if that's
no, that sounds reasonable.
helpful.
Yep. Let me ask you one last question, Isaac, and then we're going to land the plane. When you look at other peers out there, when you look at other tech leaders, what's something that you think many of them are getting wrong? What is something you would tell them, pay more attention to this? This is how to do things. Do this to get it done better.
Yeah. I think that the hiring process a lot of tech leaders implement is wildly badly motivated. Not badly motivated, creates bad outcomes.
Okay.
So it's motivated, it's well motivated. Like, they want to get good engineers who will contribute positively. But you will find in the industry a lot of interview processes that involve things like leet code, for example. And the argument is that, well, leet code, being good at leet code is, nobody thinks that people do leet code in their job. And somebody thinks that, but somebody thinks anything, right? Like, people think the earth is flat. Like, obviously, being good at leet code is not relevant to your job. Like, you're not going to be writing, you shouldn't be writing long, complex one-liners. That would be worse code than if you were writing, like things that are easy for a human to read. But people think that there is a statistical correlation between being good at leet code and being a good engineer. And I don't think that's the case. I think that practically anyone can get good at doing leet code by just memorizing and going through these motions, and that it actually doesn't correlate meaningfully with being a good engineer. There's some correlation above zero, sure, but like, whether or not they're wearing clothing is correlation above zero. So like, it doesn't matter whether it correlates, you care whether it correlates a lot. And so I think that the interview process that a lot of people implement, which relies heavily on leet code, or if not leet code, some technical interview that is designed to try and sort of like trip up their candidate or something like that. I think these are really bad ways of interviewing and evaluating people, and that people should sort of switch to trying to interview people by doing things like just giving them a representative problem of what they would actually be doing in their actual job, and seeing if they can solve it or do it. And when they do it, how do they do it?
How do they do it? Yep. And watch their process as they solve it. Got it.
Yep.
Isaac, thank you. This was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing from your journey. Highlights for me will be: leadership is the arrow that pierces through chaos. That'll stick with me. I love that. Thank you so much for being with us today, Isaac.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
To everyone else out there, make sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment. And most importantly, join us again for the next episode of the Top Innovator Series. And until then, keep your brain cells active.